House of Leaves by Mark Z Danielewski. I started this book in February of 2024 and I didn't finish it until mid-November 2024. So this book took me 4 months. It's not that thick of a book. I mean, it's thick, but this is the size of books that I prefer to read. So it shouldn't have taken me that long. But this book is art. This book is homework. This book is a crazy messed up dream and a dissertation. This book is a complete and total trip. This book is the most tedious thing I've ever read. This book is amazing. And even though I had to slog through it, I would slog through it all over again because it is art. So House of Leaves is like if Jim Henson and Tim Burton and H.P. Lovecraft all decided to write a book together, but didn't bother telling each other what they were going to write about or that they were going to write a book together at all. So, and then they just decided to smash it up at the end of it. This book is 3 stories. So the main one is about a boy named Johnny, and Johnny has had a really rough life since he was a little boy. He's had a rough life, but he very much likes to party and have lots of smecks with lots of different women and lots of different kinds of pills with his friend Lude. I think it's pronounced Lude, L-U-D-E. I was pronouncing it Lud, kind of like, but I suppose it would be Lude, like dude, only with an L. So Lude, which makes sense. So Lude tells Johnny about an apartment that just became available in his apartment complex. Apparently this old dude named Zambino recently passed away, and now this rent-controlled apartment that is also fully furnished is available, and Lude can help Johnny get it. So he does, and when Johnny moves in, Johnny finds a manuscript that Zambino has been gathering and putting together. So Zambino's part of the manuscript is the story part 2. The third and the most fascinating and the core of this book, the title for this book, House of Leaves, is regarding the Navidson Record. The Navidson Record is a series of short films created by William Navidson that depicts occurrences that happened in his home with him and his wife and 2 children. They moved into a new home and he wanted to take pictures because he's a famous photojournalist. And he wanted to document them moving into this new home. He promised his wife, Karen, that that he was going to retire, and because he was always traveling the world and not giving enough attention to his family. So he was supposed to retire. They bought this house out in the middle of nowhere in order to be able to concentrate just on their family. When they move in, one day, a hallway just appears in their house. And then other strange occurrences start happening. The hallway changes. So it was like a 5.5 minute hallway. But the dimensions of their house can't hold this hallway. And then as the hallway changes and starts, and they realize that the size of their house is 4 inches bigger on the inside than the size of their house on the outside, They, Navi, William Navidson, Navi as he is called, realizes that he is dealing with something beyond science, that he needs to, as a photojournalist, he needs to document this. This is his job. He needs to document it. Karen's not too happy about that because he was supposed to retire. But he ends up bringing in more people to experience and document the phenomena. So that's part of the story. That's like the main start of the story. Then Zambino's part, the manuscript that he's building, is he's documenting the Navidson record, but also then bringing in all the media and science books and quotes that explain what's going on as he's explaining the Navidson record. And those appear as little footnotes throughout the story of House of Leaves. So you're going to be reading this book. You're going to be reading this story. And you're reading, and you'll see these little footnotes. So you go to the bottom of this page. And sometimes the bottom of the page can be this thick with footnotes or even longer. And then so you end up kind of going down little rabbit holes as you're reading the Navidson record, you know, to get into Zambino's work and Zambino's state of mind. But then the other part that makes this just crazy and frustrating and made it part of the slog, but it also makes it the art that it is that you'll be halfway through the paragraph of talking about Navidson record and Navidson's experience in this house, and then all of a sudden it cuts off and Johnny is now telling you about what's going on in his life, about how ever since he started compiling the manifest that Zambino was getting, or the manuscript that Zambino started creating and was completely unorganized, weird things have been happening to him. Like he'll be standing there having a cigarette outside of work and he'll feel this rushness just rushing up on him, or this darkness rushing up on him. And he has this overwhelming sense of dread that if he turns around, he's going to see the darkness from the Navidson house with fingers just reaching out to grab him. And so Johnny is alluding to the fact that not only is the Navidson house itself multidimensional and otherworldly, but that maybe by Zambino recording and gathering all the information that he did about the Navidson record and compiling it may have been opening up another door to another realm or otherworldly beings, and that somehow caused Zambino's demise. And that by him organizing Zambino's works, he is also feeling like he may be then being sucked into the Navidson's house weirdness and multi-dimensionalness. The craziest thing though is when Johnny does start putting together this manifest, he does his research. Like he doesn't just take this manuscript and be like, oh, here, let me get it together. But he, you know, so he does his research. Nobody knows what the Navidson record is. Nobody's heard of the movies. Nobody's, when he looks up the publications that Zambino has indicated and the interviews that Zambino has indicated, they're not there. But they're so detailed and so descriptive that Johnny's like, well, this isn't just, he didn't just make this stuff up. This had to have been real. So there's more to this manuscript than just the mad ramblings of an old blind man. There's more to it. And so I want to, you know, Johnny's thinking, I want to organize it, get it all together, and then get it out to a publisher so the rest of the world can then experience it as well. What makes this book art is that as you're reading it, as you're reading it and it just completely jumps timelines, the font is different. So you know when you've all of a sudden like went into a different storyteller. So you know whether or not you're reading Navidson. You know whether or not you're reading Johnny. So that makes it pretty easy to transition between points of view. But the most fascinating thing about this book is how it's written. So as Navidson goes into the hallway and experiences it, the writing changes. So something happens to where Navidson has to get lower. On this page is just the word door, comma. And then on this page it says, even through a hole the size of a fist punches through the mutton. And it's in a hole the size of a fist in this page. Then some of the paragraphs are written sideways. Some of them are this way. And then as you're flipping through the pages, you do have to flip it every which way in order to read the book. So it can never be an audiobook. It will always have to be a written physical book in order to be consumed because of the way that it's written. But the way that it's written directly ties into the experiences that the characters are having while they're in this other realm. There's this one scene where Navidson is going into a hallway, and the hallway gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and as they're explaining what he's experiencing and what he's having to do and what his thought processes is, the words on the page, the room for the words on the page keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller until finally Navidson is talking about how teeny tiny the hallway is that he's having an army crawl down, and that eventually he gets stuck. And so it gets, the words keep getting smaller and smaller as it's describing this until it's just like this big, the words going back and forth here. And so your body actually has a reaction to the way that this book is written, because you're reacting to from seeing the physical amount of space for the words getting smaller and smaller too. It's very, very interesting, very, very weird. I've never seen that type of, I've never seen an author use a book page like that before. It really is art. It's like a picture on canvas where you're having a reaction to the part of the canvas that has been used. It's mind-blowing. So is it worth reading? It is worth reading, because you're never going to read another book quite like this one. Never. Are you going to enjoy it? I don't know. I enjoyed a lot of this book, and then I didn't enjoy a lot of this book. I didn't enjoy the footnotes. I didn't enjoy some of Zambino's rambling and trying to seem so enlightened and smart, but I adored Navidson's experience and his family's experience, and even some of the highbrow analysts of maybe this is what Karen was feeling while Navidson was doing this, this, and this, and how would that affect their marriage. I even enjoyed some of that to a point, but not too much. And then Johnny's life that was shared in these pages, I really enjoyed too. I think that Johnny's life could have been a book all on its own, but yeah, it is a good book. If I could read it again for the first time, would I? I would. But this is not a book that you can just pick up and read all willy-nilly, when you have free time. You will need to free up time. You will need to make a commitment to this book and be able to limit distractions, because this is a book that when you start reading it, you're not going to want to be easily distracted. You're going to want to set up like specific times during the day to read it, so it doesn't take you 9 months and then you forget what happened at the beginning of the book when you're towards the end of the book. But yes, it is definitely worth a read. If you can commit to it. Just reader beware. And until next time, you are enough just the way you are, and go get lost in some pages.